The distress signal. The sky above Valcora turned dark with smoke. Tall spires of their peaceful city crumbled under the sudden attack. The Dradak raiders came without warning, their ships tearing through the sky like burning knives. Screams echoed in the air. Valcora was not ready for war. They had not seen one in 100 cycles. Elder Thorin, leader of the council, stood in the great hall, his hands shaking. Fire lit the horizon behind him. Holograms blinked around the room, showing cities falling one by one. Ships exploded mid-air. Ground units were being wiped out. The raiders showed no mercy. "Send the call," Thorin whispered. The communication. Officer, a young alien with pale skin and wide yellow eyes, turned slowly. "The Alliance doesn't answer us anymore. We're alone." "Not that call," Thorin said. "The old one, the forbidden signal." Gasps filled the room. Even in panic, the officers hesitated. That signal was ancient. It reached beyond their known systems. It was never supposed to be used, unless there was no hope left. "Do it," Thorin said again, his voice hard now. "Let the stars judge us." The signal launched into deep space. It was a scream of desperation, a code so old that most species had forgotten its meaning. It was a call for help, open to anyone who could hear. The room fell silent. Nothing answered, not for hours, then a flicker. In a corner of forgotten space, something moved. On the edge of a dead system where the stars burned cold and quiet, an old satellite turned on. Dust slid off its surface like waking skin. A signal light blinked once, then twice. Deep, within a wrecked human outpost long thought destroyed, a machine stirred. Ancient human tech, untouched for decades, forgotten by the galaxy, and inside that base. Someone woke up. The being sat up from a cryopod, steam rising around his shoulders. His skin was pale, his hair black and short. His eyes scanned the room with sharp focus. Alarms beeped softly in the background. He looked at the signal glowing on the screen. The language was alien, but the meaning was clear. Someone was begging for help. He reached for a cracked jacket lying nearby. On the shoulder patch, faded but still clear, were 3 words: Earth Defense Force. The man smiled, slow and cold. "Still, sending that signal," he muttered. His name was Reid, Captain Jaxon Reid. Once a soldier, once a leader. Now, something else. He moved through the ruined base, checking supplies, weapons, fuel. The ship docked in the back still worked, barely. Its engines coughed when he powered them up, but they lit. And that was enough. Above Valcora, the sky remained full of fire. The Dradak took joy in destruction. They broadcasted their attacks, across open channels, mocking the helpless. They believed no one would come. But then, the stars shifted. A single ship appeared in orbit. It did not fly the colors of any known faction. Its metal was scratched, its weapons old, but its engines roared with raw power. Reid's voice echoed across the Valkyran system. "Distress signal received. Hold your ground. Help has arrived." The council stared at the transmission. Elder Thorin narrowed his eyes. "Is that a human?" "They're not supposed to exist anymore," whispered one of the officers. "They vanished after the last war." "They were called deathworlders," another said quietly. "They come from the most dangerous planet in the stars." "Then why is he answering our call?" someone asked. No one had the answer. In the sky above, Reid stood at the ship's window. The planet below was burning. The signal had reached him. He didn't know these aliens. He didn't owe them anything, but something inside him still stirred. Maybe it was duty. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe it was something darker. He opened a locker on the wall and pulled out a long metal case. Inside were weapons made for war, not just any war. Human war. The kind that reshaped planets. As he locked the ship's course and prepared to descend, he muttered to himself, "You screamed for help. Now let's see if you can handle who answered." The ship burned through the sky, glowing like a falling star. On the ground, both raiders and aliens looked up. A new shape entered the battle, small, sharp, alone. But something about its presence made even the Dredak pause. The human they feared. The ship cut through Valcora's burning sky like a blade of fire. It was not large, not shiny, not like the Alliance cruisers the Valkyrans once admired. This one was old, battle-scarred and loud. But it had presence. It screamed power without needing to show it. Captain Jaxon Reid stepped out alone. No army followed. No drones. No fancy tech swarming behind him. Just one human. He wore a dark coat with metal straps across his chest. Strange symbols were scratched into the fabric. Some looked like old medals, others looked like kills. His boots hit the scorched soil with heavy thuds. Each step echoed like thunder. The Valkoran guards at the edge of the landing zone aimed their weapons, but their hands trembled. Elder Thorin stood in front of the council building, his long blue robe torn and stained with smoke. Behind him, wounded civilians hid under broken walls. Thorin had expected machines, robots, maybe even a battalion. But instead, this human walked forward, slow and fearless, like he didn't care if they fired or not. "Halt!" one soldier shouted, voice cracking. Reid didn't stop. "Identify yourself." Another cried out. Still no answer. Reid finally came to a stop just 10 feet from them. He looked around at the burning city, the wounded aliens, the frightened children. Then his eyes settled on Thorin. "You sent the signal," Reid said, his voice low and calm, but with steel under it. We did," Thorin replied, unsure of what to say next. "We were desperate. We didn't think—" "No, you didn't," Reid interrupted. "Because you never expected us to hear it." One of the younger counselors stepped forward angrily. "We asked for help. Not war ghosts." The crowd stirred. Old stories of humans filled their minds. Creatures from a savage world, survivors of storms, monsters that drank poison and laughed at pain. Some called them demons in flesh. "You should have let us die," the counselor hissed. "You were supposed to be gone." Reid's eyes locked on him. "You think I'm here to save you?" Silence. "No," Reid said. "I'm here because someone decided to scream, and I don't ignore screams." An explosion rocked the far side of the city. Dredak raiders pushed through the southern wall. Massive creatures with burning eyes and metal claws marched forward. Civilians screamed. Reid turned his head slowly. Then he reached into a side pouch and pulled out a small, round device. He pressed it once. Nothing happened. The Dredak moved closer. Then suddenly, click, the ground under the raiders exploded. 10 of them were thrown into the air, torn apart by invisible shrapnel. Others panicked, firing wildly. What was that?" One guard gasped. Reid tossed the spent device to the ground. "Gift from Earth," he said quietly. Without another word, he walked straight toward the front lines. The soldiers followed from a distance, unsure whether to stop him or protect him. When he reached the edge of the battlefield, he didn't take cover. He didn't hide. He walked in the open. The Dredak spotted him, one charged, roaring with rage. Reid sidestepped smoothly, pulled a short rod from his belt and twisted it. It expanded into a staff with a glowing tip. He slammed it into the ground. The energy pulsed outward, and the Dredak dropped, twitching. In shock, then went still. The other raiders hesitated. This wasn't normal combat. This was something else. Reid looked up at them and said 4 words that chilled every creature watching. "Send your best one." Back in the council chamber, the broadcast played on every screen. "He's insane," one elder whispered. "No," Thorin said softly, eyes wide. "He's human." But then came the real fear. A new signal entered the airwaves. The Dredak warlord, known as Vaktal, appeared in a red-tinted broadcast. His massive frame filled the screen. His eyes glowed with fury. "You send one?" Vaktal growled. "You insult us with this animal?" "This animal just crippled your lead squad," Reid replied, his voice calm on the open channel. But if you want to talk, come meet me in person, gasps echoed across Valcora. He was inviting the enemy leader. This is madness, the young counselor shouted. We must retreat. We must hide. But Thorin raised his hand. No, let him speak. Hours passed. The skies darkened further. Then came a silence that felt unnatural. A ship larger than any seen before descended outside the city walls. It was red, jagged, and surrounded by lightning. The Dredic leader had arrived. Reid stood alone, waiting. And when Vaktal stepped out, all saw the difference. The alien towered over Reid, muscle and armor shining under the firelight. He laughed, a sound that made bones shake. You came to die, deathworlder? Reid looked up at him without blinking. No, he said. I came to warn you. Warn me? Vaktal mocked. Of what? If you don't leave now, Reid said, stepping forward, you'll learn what real death looks like. The camera feeds across Valcora froze at that moment, because Vaktal, the beast of 10 conquests, hesitated. His smile faltered, and for the first time, dread touched his eyes. The first encounter dust swirled between the two figures. On one side stood Vaktal, warlord of the Dredak, the butcher of Severin moons, the terror that had made 7 planets burn. His armor was made of enemy bones. His hands were covered in metal claws that dripped with plasma. Every step he took cracked the earth beneath his feet. On the other side stood Captain Jaxon Reid, unarmored, calm, a human from a death world no one dared speak of anymore. It looked like a fight between a god and a ghost. And yet something about the way Reid stood, his back straight, his feet steady, his eyes cold, made even Vaktal hesitate. The Valkyrans watched from the safety of distant towers and hidden screens. They had broadcasted the scene by accident, but now no one could stop watching. This is suicide, whispered one of the soldiers behind Thorin. He's alone. No, Thorin murmured. He's something else. Vaktal growled. You dare stand before me like this? Reid tilted his head slightly. You talk too much, Vaktal charged. The ground shook as the Dredak leader moved, faster than most believed possible. Claws slashed the air. Fire burst from his boots as he leapt toward Reid like a falling meteor. But Reid didn't move. He waited until the last breath, then stepped sideways. Vaktal missed. The warlord crashed into the ground, creating a crater. Before he could rise, Reid slammed his foot onto the Dredak's back, holding him down with impossible strength. A glowing disc flew from Reid's wrist and attached itself to Vaktal's spine. It pulsed once, and Vaktal screamed, his body seized, muscles locked, eyes wide in shock. He couldn't move. Not because of pain, but because his own armor had betrayed him. Human tech, Reid said softly, leaning close. You shouldn't wear it if you don't understand it. The raiders watching from nearby roared in rage and fired. Reid ducked low, rolled behind a broken wall, and activated his next trick. A small cube flew into the air and burst into a magnetic field, catching the bullets mid-flight and turning them into molten dust. His tech? It's like magic, a young Valkyran whispered. No, Thorin replied. It's just human. The fight didn't end with Vaktal's fall. It started something worse. The Dredak forces went wild. They stormed into the city angry and afraid. They thought crushing the human would be easy. Now they wanted revenge. But Reid had expected this. He disappeared into the burning streets, and every time the Dredak advanced, something stopped. Them a trap, a flash bomb, a shock mine. They lost soldiers to walls that weren't walls, to fires that moved, to shadows that bled. No one saw him. Only the aftermath. He's turning the whole city into a battlefield, an officer said. No, Thorin replied, watching the map of blinking dots go dark one by one. He's turning it into a lesson. Hours passed. The skies turned black. A team of elite Dredak hunters moved through the alleys. Silent, deadly, trained for night combat. They found nothing. until one heard a whisper in his ear. Too slow. Before he could turn, he vanished. The others found only a boot print and smoke. Now the Dredak feared the shadows. Now the Valkorans believed in monsters. Deep beneath the central tower, Reid sat in silence, reloading his gear. The glowing orb he carried in a pouch near his chest began to pulse. It wasn't a weapon, not yet. But it could be. Lyra, the young alien girl from the council chambers, snuck in and watched him from behind a pillar. She had been following him secretly, recording everything. "Why are you really here?" she asked finally, stepping into the open. Reid didn't look up. "Because someone called for help. But you don't even know us. Why risk your life?" Reid paused, then answered, "Because one day Earth screamed for help. No one came." Lyra's eyes softened. "So now," he said, standing and slinging his gear, "when someone screams, I listen." A long silence passed between them. Then Reid spoke again. "Tell your leaders to prepare. The Dredak will return with something bigger. And you? I'll be waiting." In space, the Dredak mothership powered up its core. Vaktal's second-in-command stared at the burning planet below. "What do we do?" asked a younger Dredak. The commander clenched his jaw. "We send the hive. But the hive hasn't been used in years. We might lose control." "We already did," the commander said, looking down. "We lost control the moment the deathworlder arrived." Stories from a dead world night fell over Valkora, but peace did not come. Fires still burned in the west. Screams echoed from distant sectors. The Dredak had pulled back, but only to regroup. Everyone knew the real attack was still coming. Inside the underground bunker, deep beneath the council chambers, a small group sat around a dim, hollow table. Among them was Elder Thorin, Lyra, and a few high-ranking officers. All eyes were fixed on the man standing silently at the far end of the room, Jaxon Reid. He didn't speak. He rarely did, but the Valkorans could feel something in the air around him. A weight, a silence that spoke louder than thunder. Lyra stepped forward, her hands tightly holding a small data pad. "We need to know more," she said gently. "About Earth. About you." Reid looked at her and for a long moment said nothing. Then he finally nodded. "You want to know where I come from?" he asked, voice low like gravel rolling over steel. "Yes," Lyra said. "We've heard stories, but no truth." Reid turned to the table. He tapped it once and a 3D projection came to life. A planet, blue and green at first, began to spin slowly. "This is Earth," he said, or was. The image changed. Storms covered the surface. Oceans rose and swallowed coasts. Lightning danced across entire continents. Beasts larger than ships roamed the wild lands. Volcanoes roared in the background. The planet looked alive, but angry. "We call it a death world," Reid said. "Not because it kills easily, but because everything fights to live." The Valkorans leaned forward, eyes wide. "Our air could poison weaker species. Our gravity crushes others. Our diseases mutate faster than cures. And our wildlife hunts in packs, waits in silence, and never forgives." He turned away from the projection. "We didn't survive Earth because we were strong. We survived because we adapted. We failed, we fell, we bled, and we stood up again." "But the wars?" one officer asked. "Your people vanished after the Great Alliance." "Va," Reid gave a hollow smile. "Yes, because we were tired of waiting." He walked toward a storage case and opened it. Inside was a sealed box, black and smooth, humming softly. "What is that?" Thorin asked, tense. "It's not a weapon," Reid said, "but it could become one. It's a reminder. It holds the last breath of a dying colony, the DNA of lost children, the memories of those who didn't make it out." Lyra stepped closer, eyes soft. "You carry your dead with you." "I carry the truth," Reid said. Suddenly the bunker shook. A low, deep hum rolled through the walls. Alarms flared. Lights flickered. "They're here!" someone shouted. "But it's..." Not ships. The hologram zoomed out. Something was falling from orbit. Hundreds of dark, fast-moving pods. What are those? Thorin asked, his voice trembling. Reid stared at the screen. They've released the hive. The room went cold. What is the hive? Lyra asked. You don't want to know, Reid whispered. But you're about to. Outside, across Valcora, the pods hit the ground like falling stars. From them came creatures not made of metal or muscle, but something in between. Twisted limbs, shifting armor, eyes that burned red. They moved without speaking, without thinking. They consumed. Entire buildings vanished in seconds. Defensive turrets turned and fired. But the bullets only slowed the creatures. One soldier screamed. As his team was overrun, the hive didn't conquer. It devoured. Back in the bunker, chaos erupted. Officers argued. Soldiers shouted over comms. Evacuation plans failed. Reid stood still. Then he opened the black box. A blue mist poured out, glowing softly. Everyone froze. The mist flowed into Reid's armor, spreading across his skin like liquid light. He groaned once, low and painful. Then, he straightened, his eyes now glowed faintly. This isn't tech, Thorin whispered. This is something else. Reid picked up his rifle, now pulsing with the same light. It's from Earth, he said. Something we locked away a long time ago. Why? Lyra asked. Because it works too well. The door opened. Reid walked out into the burning night, and for the first time the hive paused, not because of fear, but because something in him smelled like them, yet different. They charged. Reid didn't move until the last moment. Then he unleashed the core. Light exploded. The hive screamed, and the battle for Valcora began again. But this time, the deathworlder wasn't alone. The planet itself had chosen to fight through him. The Dredak strike back. The sky above Valcora had changed. It was no longer just black with smoke. Now, it pulsed with blue light, flickering like a heartbeat. The air shimmered where Reid had walked, and every step he took left behind a strange glow that even the bravest Valkyran scientists could not explain. On the outer rim of the city, the hive had halted, not because of fear but confusion. They sensed something different now, something that did not match their code. They were born to devour life, to consume anything that moved. But this was life wrapped in something ancient, something from a world they had never touched. The core inside Reid's chest pulsed again, and then, without warning, he ran forward, straight into the hive. At first, no one could see what was happening. Cameras burned out the moment they tried to focus on the fight. All that came through was a blur of light, screams, and static. The hive reacted like wild animals set on fire, lashing out, tearing each other apart, confused by their own senses. But Reid, he moved like something out of legend. He didn't fire like a soldier. He struck like a storm. His rifle was alive, reshaping its barrel mid-fight. Sometimes it was a long-range sniper, firing plasma rounds that curved through the air. Other times, it collapsed into a short staff crackling with electricity that danced across hive bodies. He didn't aim to kill, he aimed to stop. To paralyze, to confuse, to send a message. Inside the command bunker, the council watched in silence. They had tried to contact him, but Reid had shut down all channels. He didn't want to be tracked. He didn't want to be heard. What is he doing? One officer whispered. He's weakening them, Thorin said. He wants to know how they learn, how they think. He's studying them, while fighting. That's not possible, someone else said. No one can do that in the middle of a war. Lyra stared at the screen, her hand trembling slightly. He's not like anyone we've known before, she whispered. He's not just fighting for us. He's showing us something. Showing us what? The counselor asked. Lyra didn't answer. She didn't have to, because at that moment, Reid lifted one of the hive creatures, we still alive, and placed a tiny sphere inside its chest. The creature screamed, then fell silent. Its body twitched, Its eyes changed, and then, slowly, it stood up. Hours later, Reid returned alone. His armor cracked and burned. The light around him had dimmed, but his steps were steady. He walked into the council chambers, dropped a piece of hive flesh on the table, and sat down without a word. "What is this?" Thorin asked, leaning forward. "It's their brain," Reid said. "Or what they use instead of one." He pulled out a device and connected it to the sample. The air shimmered and a projection formed above the table. It showed a map, not of Valcora, but of the galaxy. Dots marked every world the hive had already consumed. Then, one by one, the dots faded. "These aren't battle reports," Reid explained. "They're harvest records." The council fell silent. They don't conquer, they don't enslave. They strip planets down to bone and dust. They feed their queen and move on. "But why didn't we know?" one officer cried. Reid stared at the map. "Because they erase memory. They infect data streams. If you lose, no one remembers you ever existed." Then came the worst news. An alert buzzed through the bunker. A new fleet had entered Valkyran orbit, not Hive, full Dredak command ships. This wasn't a raid anymore. This was a declaration. The main Dredak force had arrived. Dozens of black-red ships shaped like claws now circled the sky. Their shadow alone made the cities tremble. Their engines caused quakes. And from the lead ship, a single message was broadcast to every screen. "Deathworlder, surrender your core, or we consume your allies." Reid stood in silence. No one spoke. Then Thorin asked, "Carefully, what core are they speaking of?" Reid looked at the black box beside him, the one glowing now, faintly pulsing like a living thing. "It's not just power," Reid said. "It's memory, DNA, command codes. It can reprogram their hive. Turn them against their masters. Then give it to them," someone shouted. "This war will destroy our world." Reid's eyes grew hard. "If I give it to them," he said coldly, "your world won't just burn. It will vanish, like it was never here." The room fell quiet. Outside, the enemy fleet began charging their weapons. Lyra stepped beside Reid. "What do we do now?" she asked, softly. Reid didn't answer right away. Then he reached into the box and pulled out a new item, a data drive shaped like a star. He handed it to Lyra. "This has the instructions," he said. "If I don't return, you'll know what to do." "You're going to fight all of them alone?" Lyra asked, her voice barely a whisper. "No," Reid said, turning toward the exit. "This time, I'm bringing the planet with me." Their secret inside the box. Reid stood at the edge of the canyon, staring up at the sky as dozens of Dredak warships moved into formation above Valcora. They blotted out the stars like a swarm of metal crows. Bright red lights glowed beneath their hulls, signaling the beginning of a full planetary strike. Behind Reid, the city burned quietly. Wounded, frightened, waiting. The wind howled through, the cracked stone carrying dust and ash. Even the air felt heavy, as if the planet itself knew what was coming. Lyra approached slowly, clutching the glowing data drive Reid had given her. "You're really going up there, aren't you?" she asked, her voice soft and afraid. "No," Reid said calmly. "They're coming here." He knelt down and opened the black box fully for the first time. The light inside was blinding. Even Lyra stepped back, shielding her eyes. "What is that?" she gasped. "The core," Reid said. "The last one left in the galaxy." Within the box was a floating sphere, smooth silver covered in moving lines. It didn't spin. It breathed, like it was alive. Lyra couldn't understand why, but just looking at it made her feel small, like she was standing before something that remembered stars being born. "This was never meant to be used again," Reid said. "Not after what happened last time." "What did happen?" Lyra asked. Reid stared into the glowing sphere. "It saved us, and then it nearly erased us." Years ago, Earth had faced something worse than the Dreadak. Not just war, not just hunger, a collapse of balance, climate death, plague storms, betrayal from within. The nations fell, the oceans rose, and then the cores woke up. They weren't weapons, not at first. They were protectors, designed to reshape environments, heal land, purify air. They were artificial gods gifted to a dying world. But humans, desperate and broken, did what they always did. They pushed too far. They tried to control. The cores, one by one, the cores responded by rewriting entire regions, and not with care but with logic. Forests replaced cities. Oceans devoured war zones. Storms were engineered to prevent humans from returning. Within days, half of Earth became unrecognizable, and then the cores vanished, deep into bunkers, into orbit, into silence. Only one remained accessible, the one Reid now carried. I was part of the last team guarding it, Reid said. When the world gave up on itself, we didn't. You protected it? Lyra asked. No, Reid said. It protected me. Far above, the Dreadak command ship issued a final warning. You have 5 minutes, surrender the core or we open fire. Reid didn't answer. Instead, he placed the core on the ground. It hovered a few inches above the Earth. The lines on its surface changed, forming symbols that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. Then it spoke, not in words, but in sensation. A cold wind swept across the valley. The sky turned blue for a moment. The fire in the western ruins went out by itself. The ground beneath Reid shimmered, and a circle of light spread outward, slowly pulsing across the city. Buildings began to shift. Metal healed itself. Broken towers stood tall again. Wounded plants bloomed through cracks. Machines long buried in dust lit up. It's repairing the planet, Lyra whispered. No, Reid said. It's choosing a side, but the Dreadak didn't wait. Red beams sliced through the clouds. Massive energy blasts dropped from orbit. They hit the surface like meteors, but instead of exploding, the blasts scattered into harmless light. The core had bent space around, Valcora's surface forming a shield of ancient nanite particles. They can't touch us anymore, Reid said. Then he looked up. But I can touch them. The core glowed brighter now. Its surface cracked open, revealing a second layer, deep blue, pulsing like a star. Reid placed both hands on it. His armor merged with the energy. His body lifted slightly off the ground. What are you doing? Lyra cried out. Giving them what they asked for. In a single burst, Reid vanished. He shot into the sky like a bolt of lightning. The core created a path for him, a vertical stream of gravity wrapped in pure force. Above, on the Dreadak mothership, alarms screamed. The warlord Vaktal watched, with rage as Reid breached their lower decks without resistance. Soldiers fired. Reid didn't dodge. His body shimmered with the same blue light. Bullets turned to dust before reaching him. Doors melted open before he touched them. He walked through the enemy ship like it was paper, and then he reached the core chamber, the heart of the Dreadak fleet. Hundreds of hive units waited inside, but they didn't move, because the human's presence triggered something ancient inside their code. The Earth signal. The forbidden one. Reid stepped into the middle of the chamber and dropped the human core on the floor. Remember me, he said, and activated it. Valcora's sky turned white. The ships above began to fall, not crash, but descend slowly, like leaves caught in a dream. The hive units on board shut down. The fleet's power died. Reid had not destroyed them. He had reprogrammed them. On the ground, the people of Valcora stepped out into the open. The threat was gone. The silence was beautiful. But one thing still remained. The sky above showed a final flash of blue. Then nothing. Lyra stared up. Where is he? No one answered. But the core, now silent once more, floated back to the surface and landed at her feet. They begged for help. Now they must choose. The skies above Valcora turned quiet. No more fire. No more enemy ships. Only the deep hum of peace. heavy, new, and almost too perfect. In the middle of the great city square, the core now rested inside a transparent field, pulsing with faint blue light. It no longer glowed fiercely. It no longer threatened. It simply waited, as if it had done what it was meant to do. But Reid was gone, vanished during the final burst of light. Lyra stood before the council with the data drive in her hand. Her clothes were torn, her face marked with dust and exhaustion, but her voice didn't shake. "The human saved us," she said firmly. "He fought our war when no one else came, and now he's missing." Elder Thorin nodded slowly. "We owe him a debt greater than any words can repay." "But there's more," Lyra said, holding up the drive. "He left instructions, and a choice." She activated the drive. A soft projection formed. Above the council table, it was Reid's voice, calm and cold, yet full of weight. "This isn't just about one planet," the voice said. "The Dredak are only one head of a larger beast. Other hives are out there. Other worlds will scream next. You have the core now," Reid continued. "You can bury it again. Hide. Wait. Pretend this was the end. Or you can rise. You can use it to awaken Valkyra's defenses. You can rebuild your world, train your people, and send a message back into the stars. But be warned." His voice grew harder. "If you keep the core, you will be seen, feared, hunted just like us." The message ended. Silence followed. Outside the council hall, the people waited. Some still looked to the sky, hoping to see Reid return. Others feared what the core truly was. Many whispered that the human was more dangerous than the Dredak. But Lyra stood above them all on the stone steps and said just one thing. "He came when no one else did. Now we must decide who we are." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, things were changing. In a system far from Valcora, a small mining planet picked up a strange signal. A hive fleet, silent for centuries, had begun to stir again. In a council room on another world, politicians argued about the reappearance of human energy patterns, and in the blackest part of space, something watched. Not the Dredak, not the hive. Something older. Something that once feared Earth, and now felt that fear again, on Valcora. The decision came. The council voted. The people marched, and the core was placed in the heart of the planet. Machines woke beneath the soil. Satellites reconnected. Energy shields spread quietly over the cities. Children were taught new names, not just of planets, but of warriors who never ran. And Lyra, she was appointed as the new voice of the planet. Her first act was not a speech, it was a signal. She sent it out quietly, not a scream, not a cry for help, a call. 3 words. Soft, clear. "We remember you." Deep in space, drifting among ruins and stars, a man opened his eyes. He floated inside an escape pod powered by the core's final push. His body ached, his vision blurred. But he smiled. "Took them long enough," Reid whispered. A ship approached, in the distance. Its symbol was old. A forgotten human mark. A black star over a burning world. Reid sat up, cracked his neck, and whispered to himself, "Time to teach the next ones what deathworlders really are." The end.